Hello everyone, I've just come down to the shed to get some jobs done. I've got an armful of tomato seedlings that I need to pot up. And I've just arrived in the shed and it is an absolute disaster in here. I've got nowhere, I can't even put these guys down anywhere. So before anything happens, I'm going to have to do a tidy. And now the dogs have just broken into the garden. They were on a ban again because they were chasing cats. So just going to hope for the best. I don't know where to start with this mess. I wasn't going to film today because I have a really croaky voice. I've been away for work at a conference and spent 3 days just yakking. So yes, I'm trying to rest my voice, but there are jobs to be done, so we'll see how it goes. But this might end up being more of a silent vlog, and I'll put some descriptions in of what it is that I'm actually up to, because I really don't know how well my voice is gonna hold out for this. So I'm gonna go tidy and then I'll show you what it looks like after. Okay, so everything should be recording properly and you should be able to hear me. Today we are potting up tomatoes. I put them down in the mini greenhouse and I've just left them there, so bear with, I'm going to get them back. So, as I was saying, it is time to pot up tomatoes. I've got quite a lot of tomatoes that are looking about this big. These are the ones that I sowed at the end of March. I've got another set that I sowed in early April and they're just starting to germinate now. So these ones have got their second leaves. They've got a long, strong stem, most of them. This one, you see that? It's actually kind of twisted around, and is starting to struggle under its own weight. I've only brought 6 pots out with me. That is actually 7 tomatoes, because that one's got 2 in. Because pricking out tomatoes is one of the dullest jobs. Pricking out anything is one of the dullest jobs in gardening. So I'm pacing myself through it. And we'll see how we get. I can always, if I'm feeling inspired, I can always go and get some more off the propagator tray in my laundry room and we can do more. I'm potting them up straight into these square pots. Some people prefer to put them into a 7-inch pot first. Really, it's just down to what you've got. I happen to have a lot of these, so I'm going to pot them out into these straight away, and then they'll stay in here for, I don't know, 3, 4, maybe up to 6 weeks until I start planting them outside. That's really weather dependent, and it's dependent on how routine I am. I couldn't find the right word. I'm not sure that's the right word, but they've got to be hardened off before they can go outside, and that involves some discipline. And discipline is not, for this stuff, is not one of my specialties. As you can see from my pots, some people are really specific about always making sure that you clean and disinfect pots before you use them again. And it's one of those jobs that I just don't do. There's an awful lot of work that goes into gardening. I'm not really into making myself unnecessary work. And I find pot cleaning to be quite unnecessary. I'm going to tap it out and sort of get rid of any loose soil that's now dry from whenever this was used previously. I get away with this because I don't suffer in my garden from pests and diseases. Fingers crossed that will remain true. So I'm not worried about things being passed on by the pots to new plants. Some gardeners who have other things going on might make a different decision, but this is the decision that works in my garden. So I don't overly worry about it. When I'm potting up, I'm going to make a potting mix in this bucket right here. And I'm going to use the last of this container compost. This is a really good time where having some just generic heat-free multi-purpose compost would be a good idea, because that's a really good thing to put in these things. I've used that leftover compost, which is for pots and containers, because it just has a bit more nutrition in it, and it is in contrast to the seed compost, which is really fine and really doesn't contain anything in it that is so going to support the growth, the long-term residency of a plant living in this soil. So because this is for pots and containers, it's got some added food in here, plant food in here already. But I might just add a little bit of blood, fish and bone as well for like a slow release fertilizer. So that's coming out of here. Oh. Well, that serves me right. Okay. Soil everywhere. Moving swiftly on. I'm just going to take probably just a handful and a bit that I'm mixing into there. I've got dry compost in my jar. And the final thing that I'm adding into my potting mix is some perlite. And I'm going to use, I was thinking about this when I couldn't sleep the other night, because they're the kinds of thoughts I have. And I would usually have quite a high proportion of perlite in my mix, but I actually think that I'm going to have just less this time round, because in past years I've found that the purpose of having perlite in the soil mix is to make sure that the soil doesn't get waterlogged and cloggy, so that there is still free draining capability inside the pots. Otherwise, the roots of the plant are likely to rot. But when you have too much of it, you have no water retention at all, and then the plants struggle to grow and get strong because they're too thirsty. And I've definitely been guilty of doing that in past years. So I'm just going to do a much lighter mix of perlite this time round. I think this is probably okay. I'm just going to do one more handful just to be sure. And that's it, we're ready to go. Another thing that I should have done before I started this exercise, but I haven't, and I'm not going to do it now, is pre-watered the pots, because it makes it much easier when you're, so if I'd watered them a couple of hours ago and I had time for the water to sort of soak in but drain out of these little pots, it helps when you're transferring them from one pot to another. But I haven't done it, and I'm not going to go and do it now and then come back and finish this in a couple of hours time. just going to cope. But if you're using this as inspiration, and that is something that I would highly recommend you do. So now what I'm going to do for the first one, it's possible that when I take this tomato out of here, the soil is going to crumble. But just in case it doesn't, what I'm going to do is I've put a little bit of compost in the bottom of this pot, and then I've put the small pot in it, and I'm going to fill compost around it. Press that in, and then what I should have is a hole in the pot that's the same size as the roots for my little tomato seedling. If this soil is too dry, that's not going to work, and we'll do it differently. So I'm just going to tip the pot upside down. You can see there's some quite good roots in there. And then I should just be able to pop this in the hole. Now, in addition to that, I'm going to press it down, and I am going to top this up with extra compost or extra potting mix. And do you see that my tomato, where it had that long stem, like this one, and I've potted it up so that just the leaves that are just poking out. Tomatoes and cucumbers, courgettes, and a few other type varieties are really clever. In fact, most varieties really, they're really clever in that they will grow roots out of this stem. So when you've got these long stemmed seedlings, and some can get even like properly leggy, these aren't really leggy, they've just grown a little bit longer than they should have done in this pot. You can create strength in that stem by putting the soil up to here, and all new stabilizing anchor roots will grow out of this stem, and the plant will continue to grow up from that point. You'll have a really nice, strong tomato. So yeah, and I'm going to pop my label back in there. And I'm going to do exactly the same thing 6 more times. I've just lost a bit of footage because I dropped the camera midway through recording, and so it stopped. But I have hit some of these pots which are really dry, and so the root ball isn't staying together when I transfer it into the new pot. So I'm just going to show you the alternate way that I do this, and this is actually going to be useful for some of these really long stemmed seedlings, and that is that I'm not putting any soil in there at all. I'm just going to take the seedling out, and I'm sort of dropping it into the bottom and breaking up that root ball of soil so that it sits as low as possible into the pot. And then, because these pots are small and handy, I'm using it to just transfer compost around that stem, so sort of very gently holding on to the leaves and filling the pot around it, but sort of trying to keep it as in the middle as possible. Again, press it down and go again, so that it's really buried right up to its neck. So we've done 4 so far. So I'm doing a mixture depending on the needs of each individual seedling. I'm trying to just give a rough clean out of these pots because I can use them for something else later. Peanut, what are you doing? Peanut. Good boy. Never do anything wrong, do you? Good doggy. This last little pot has got 2 tomato seeds in it, and I am going to put them both in the same bigger pot as well, and that is entirely because I haven't got enough potting mix left to do anything else. In fact, I'm probably going to have to top this up with a little bit more. And the only thing I've got is the topsoil or the seed compost, and I really genuinely don't know which is going to be best, but I think I'm going to go topsoil. So just put one extra scoop, a little bit more perlite, I'm not going to worry about plant food. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to worry about plant food. Because now I've got enough potting mix to put these 2 tomato plants into their own individual pots. But yeah, a pot like this will easily house 2 of these, so don't worry too much if you don't have enough pots. I'm just going to split these. Very carefully. Look at the difference in the roots. I'm going to put the big one in the big pot. And the little one in a slightly smaller pot. I have an even smaller one. I think I might put it in that one instead. And this time I'm just holding this in the pot and pouring over the top of it. If I ever get monetized on YouTube, the first thing I'm going to do is buy one of those bendy over the table camera holders. But as I am absolutely no effort into making my YouTube channel monetized, we're quite a long way off from that. Okay. So there we have it, folks. Let me just flip the camera for you. One dinky winky one. And 6 bigger ones. And dog up to something it shouldn't be. I need to write that one a label. Okay, so the next thing to do is to take these out and give them a good drink. It's very stressful getting moved from one pot to another. I got these blue trays, which I got many years ago from the greengrocer. I was fortunate enough to live near an independent greengrocer who used to be inundated with these and with the bigger ones, like that one there. And he was very happy to give them away to me. And they've always been very useful around the allotment site. Putting them in here is how I'm going to carry them back into the house, because these are not anywhere near ready yet for leaving out. I've got to go and get the hose. I've just been in the mini greenhouse and there's quite a lot of things in here that need to be potted on. Let's have a look. Considering I said this was going to be not a chatty video, I'm doing quite a lot of chatting. So the dill, those coriander, potentially the snapdragons. I'd like them to be a bit bigger before I try handling them though. The parsley is nearly there but not quite, and there's a couple of lettuce in there that should be. The sunflowers haven't done anything, and they've been in there long enough now that I think maybe they're not going to. The new coriander hasn't done anything, but then that coriander took ages, so dahlia's doing quite well, but that peony isn't doing anything, and it looks like it might be rotten, so I don't think it's going to. These spring onions haven't done anything yet. Do you remember all of the thousands of cosmos seeds that I sowed? I've got 3 germinated, one's just about to show and another one is just about to show. This lot of spring onions have done absolutely nothing. I'm going to get rid of these soon. I think I'm just going to give up on this tray. That was early March they were sown, so they definitely should have done something by now. These were the trays of seed that I grew with you last time, and we've got quite a lot of beetroot starting to show. And possibly some chard. But nothing on anything else yet, none of the leeks. So we'll wait and see. We've still got a little bit of time if we need to sow more of these. I'm not worried. But these dill and those 2 coriander we need to do something about, so I'll take the coriander first. With these things in seed trays like this coriander, I've got a couple of different choices of what I could choose to do with them next. One choice is that I could actually just lift them and put them in these little pots that I was using for the tomatoes. The other choice would be to prick them out into a module tray like this one. The choice I'm going to take is going to be to pot them all into modules like this sort of size. These are when I pick up trays of plants from the garden centre or the supermarket, quite often when they've got like, you know, six for a couple of pounds. These are quite handy trays to keep. And what I'm going to do with the coriander, particularly because there's only 2 here, I'm going to put both of them into one module. And then I will show you how I'm going to deal with the dill after that. So I've made a mix using topsoil, perlite and bloodfish and bone. And I'm just going to fill up these modules in the same way that you've seen me do this when I'm preparing for seed sowing. But I'm not going to push it down. And I'm a bit nervous about this, if I'm honest, because I would normally always have some form of a compost in a mix like this. This is the first time I'm doing this with only topsoil. So this may end up being a very unsuccessful experiment. And there's no point in Googling it, because everybody's going to have different experiences. And you never know, it may work perfectly fine for me. So now I have my filled tray, but I haven't pressed the soil down. That is a significant difference. And then I'm going to take my coriander, and I'm grabbing a fork out of my stash of tools, and I'm just going to lift under the seedling so I damage as little of the root as possible. Normally I wouldn't be doing it one-handed. And I'm just teasing the roots out from the seed tray, and look at how well those roots are formed. I'm taking this over to my module tray, and I'm using my dibber, which in this case is a little paintbrush, and I'm going to dib a hole. Again, with a bit more forethought and planning, I would pre-water this module tray, and it can make this job a bit easier. This potting mix is not super dry though, so I am getting away with it. And I've just dropped that coriander. I'm going to move this so that the camera focuses on me. I've just dropped it into the hole. I'm going to very carefully, using the tip of the pencil, tip of the paintbrush, just close that hole up. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing here. Make a little hole, make a sort of a well. Take the fork and tease out the seedling. Tease out its roots. Get right underneath them so you don't break any. And what I found is that this one, actually two, a much smaller one and a really nicely well established one. And pop this nicely well established one in the corner opposite the previous seedling, and these are going in the same module. And then I'm going to make a third hole just in the middle. I'm going to drop this smaller one into it. I'm using the tip of the pencil to very carefully tease those roots and that stem down without breaking them, and then just fill in the hole. And then I've got a nice selection of coriander. I'm going to just sweep this used soil into a bucket. All this used soil I just throw out onto my beds. So I'll empty this seed tray. And I just use it to mulch the beds. And then I'm going to do exactly the same thing with that tray of dill. I've decided to sit down while doing this because it really is murder on the back to bend over or lean over the table that way. So just take a couple of minutes. I'm not going to make you sit and watch me do all of these. There's a lot of plants here. But just a couple of things to remind you that what we're trying to avoid here is unnecessary contact with the root, because it can damage them. And if the roots are damaged, then the seedling won't grow into a full plant. So you'll see me always picking them up very delicately by the leaves and then just teasing away any extra soil and trying to, again, just gently encourage those roots to go down inside the hole. And the other thing that I was just going to add here is that with these bigger modules, I'm putting at least 4, because I've got loads of dill, so I'm putting at least 4 seedlings into each module, because with herbs particularly, they're quite delicate, so you can get away with having several plants in a single pot. When you buy herbs from the supermarket, that's exactly what they've done. They will take a little bunch of seedlings and put them together in the same pot, and that's how you get sort of a nice full pot of herbs. It's not even uncommon. The fact that I'm separating these out is actually probably a bit more care and attention than this needs. So just as an example here, I'm making a much bigger hole, and I'm going to drop just 2 together into it and not overly worried. As long as I'm delicate about those roots, I don't do any unnecessary damage there. Again, these will thrive in a little dill plant community. Then they will make a nice strong root ball, because ultimately these are destined in about a month to go out into the main garden beds. At the same sort of time, I'll start direct sowing out there as well, because it'll be so much warmer. Okay, I've got 2 last jobs for right now. By the way, I didn't film it, so you don't know, but I have pricked out the dill. Ooh, let me show you what I've done. I've pricked out as much dill as I can be bothered right now, and I have left the rest of the tray in there. They'll be quite happy, and I'll come and prick out some more later. And then I've given it all a really good drink. So we are one step closer. And note to my editing self, oh, I've left the water running. Ah, a disaster. Okay, what was I saying? 2 more jobs to be done. And they are, I need to earth up the potato. These ones have been earthed up twice already. These ones haven't started poking out yet. And these ones, oh no, Peanut! Peanut has destroyed a cabbage. Right, well, that's the dogs on a ban again. These ones haven't started popping out. Peanut! Peanut! Out! Get out! Go on. Take your cabbage with you. Come on, get out! More evidence. Go eat your cabbage over there. Stare out of my garden. There is a distinct possibility I will never get to eat any of the cabbages that I ever grow. What have I been trying to say for the last 5 minutes? Need to earth up the potatoes. And I've got a hosta that I want to pot up, and this one is supposed to be giant, so it's going to need to go in a big pot. And I haven't got any compost, so I'm just going to water it and hope that it survives until I get to the garden centre tomorrow. I'm going to say hi.